Hi, welcome to S-World Angel Theory and Paradigm Shift. This website, www.angeltheory.org. I am Nick Ray Ball. It is the 24th of March, 2019, 1:33 London time. You can skim through this website at your leisure. Book 1, Book 2, backstory to Book 2, Book 3 a little bit, the rest of them not a lot. A lot of information on the hard drive, 8 years work. Okay, so we're just going to move to the first book, M Systems. Have a quick look at this systems design, and we're focusing on number 10, the RES equation, revenue times efficiency times spin, albeit now it is the SES equation, savings times efficiency times spin, because savings is more what it is than revenue. Okay, moving on. This was maybe the first page worth its sort. 2011, an idea from chaos theory and a plan for a city. The POP principle, now financial gravity. The desire to have Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook and others help with the technology. At this point, the property development was basically to hedge the technology investment, as well as, say, investing $1 billion in technology. They also get land, and then that land becomes a city, and therefore it's hedged. That was the original idea anyway. That and the amount of software we needed would take an entire city to build. Maybe. Okay. The year afterwards, 2012, and American Butterfly. 4 books, The Theory of Every Business, Spiritually Inspired Software, The Network of a String, and the beginning of another book called The Butterfly. Going to skip through this very quickly, and so I'm going to skip straight to S-World UCS, chapter 8 of the first book, and special projects. We can see it here. At the time, because it could be afforded, this seemed like a good idea, and because my own motivation is to help the world, not myself. I know everyone says that, but they don't have my reasons. We're not going to get into those reasons. Okay, moving on. So I'm just giving a basic introduction here. This book, A More Creative Capitalism, is the second book, and this is the book we're talking about today. It's now split into 2, S-World Angel Wing, A More Creative Capitalism, and A More Creative Capitalism, 64 Reasons Why. Within Angel Theory, this is this link here. And this is the beginning of the special projects, which continued, if you remember, from S-World UCS. Now the special projects, I think there ended up being 16 of them, if I believe. Yes. Yeah, there we go. There's the special projects back in November 24th, Sienna's birthday. So it's particularly always a big deal, whatever gets written on that day. Okay, January 2018, the projects expand, and it's realized that all of them can be created by making the city design, the city's designs, in a location of abject poverty, which Angel M System 15, Angel Pop had already suggested was the way to go. Here we go. And then this was entitled Ripple Effects and Elephants for Paul G. Allen. If you read it, you'll understand why. And most recently, 64 Reasons Why, Growth Theory, Externalities. And now we're getting into the economics of it, and it has expanded to 64 different individual reasons, each one of them very significant all of which are ripple effects or externalities, positive externalities of the creation of the network that I'm describing, the software that is being described, and the city designs which are a combination thereof. Okay, and lastly, I suppose it's not online yet because is this paper that I'm writing, want help to write, growth theory versus climate change. And we're the cardinal rule of the city design is it has to be net zero, i.e. carbon, it actually needs to improve the carbon footprint. And my idea for this article was about the two Nobel laureates, William Nordhaus and Paul Romer, and that William Nordhaus is focused on climate change, and Paul Romer has put a lot of effort into a rather unpopular idea called a charter city. And I think the Nobel may have had it on their mind, how can growth theory, how can Paul Romer doing well make William Nordhaus better off, because any growth is generally bad for the environment. Hence this paper and the 64 reasons why. Because of the 64 reasons why, including that it has to be net zero, growth in this way is good. Okay, now let's get into the spreadsheet. This is the ŠÉŠ-v5, or actually ŠÉŠ-v5 maybe. I'm not sure. Look, it has this. Yes, it's V5. Okay. Anyway, right. So global in purple is an input, and this, don't think of this as a spreadsheet. This covers quarter of a million cells. This is a design for software. When you design software, if it started off coming from a spreadsheet, it's very, 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 very easy to do. It makes things an awful lot faster. For instance, one of the characteristics is spin. Revenue times efficiency times spin, or now savings times efficiency times spin. Fine, here we've only got the one spin, but each year that goes by we spin more, which basically means we're spending the money twice within a year. First spend before 11th of July, the second spend before the 1st of January, the year afterwards 3 times a year, and so on and so on. Okay, so SES, savings times efficiency times spin, high octane financial engineering. It's like the principle that a bank, if it has $1 billion, can lend out $9 billion, so increasing the cash flow by, I think that's 900%. But if everyone wants to get their money back at the same time, bank run, recessions are built on this inferior way to do the job of increasing the cash supply because of the bank run principle. SES is different because the money is always in the bank. Let's have a look here. As I said, purples are inputs. This purple is $4 billion invested into cash flow. And that's added to by another $2.3 billion from exports, which is a nominal figure, just so it's there. Real estate sold. Whole city being built for one organization or one cartel. It's not the right word, one network. And we have that plus that plus that plus that equals that. But in the next year, because there's this 5 billion in cash flow still in the network, it acts as savings. It gets recorded down here, cash flow. It gets recorded here as add to next year, and then it pops up here. It's called the law of conservation of revenue. I got the idea from Hawking when he was explaining the law of conservation of energy, albeit it did take a couple of years to sort of work that one out, but it's good because we've got our nominal trade, we've got real estate sales, city sales, plus now we've got what's left over from the year before. So our revenue increases, or as it should be, savings increase. And here's the trick. You see here we've got revenue times an E, that's the efficiency, of 91%. That just means 91% of that revenue ends up at another company or companies, definitely companies, in the same network. And they do this thing I call a Siena equilibrium. So as half of them's buying from each other, the other half are selling to each other, and it just flows. Not unlike this little chap here. This is the plumbed pipe image, care of made by Paul Samuelson, care of Kate Raworth, from the first edition of his textbook Economics. This we see money going around in just the way I explained, being topped up by new investment. This is this money, and in this scenario 90% of it is going around like this. Okay, 10% is lost, but an additional 2.3 being, I don't know, 10% is lost, and it looks like there's about 30-40% gain. You know, the net result is each year it gets bigger, and we're not doing anything at this point that is different from classic economics, real classic economics. What we do different in the second year is to spin it. So this money goes to 91%, is spent 91% of the time on other network companies. So there you go. But mid-year, those companies spend that money again. And the thing here is that these new companies that spend the money again, and this initial set of companies, all actually the same companies, the money's always there. You know, that is in cash in the bank. Now, and I literally mean it. Ideally, I want to call it a wonder, because there's a lot of gaming that goes into this, and in gaming, especially civilization, you have wonders, and this wonder that I want is for all the cash to be in this glass, super tough glass, so you can't, you know, it would stop a missile, but glass anyway, a pyramid, and inside of this pyramid is just, you know, what looks like blocks, housing blocks of money or gold, etc., etc. At the moment we're only using dollars because it's a lot simpler that way, and you certainly can't use the Malawian currency because that would completely mess their currency up. It would deflate or inflate. Right. Okay, so let's see this third year. Okay, this money is the money that's been flying around the system, losing a bit each time, but gaining more than it loses. And we can see this money turns into that cash flow, that cash flow, that cash flow. So from 10 billion, well, makes 26 billion. Now that's nowhere near as powerful as the deposit rate technique, I call it, where one puts $1 billion in a bank and the bank lends it out 9 times. So the cash flow in the economy is 10 times or 9 times greater than it actually is. At this point, it's only increasing by 255%, not 900%, which the current system, the deposit rate mechanism creates. But yeah, you guessed it. Each year we increase spin. In fact, it would probably start with a spin of about 4, but makes it a lot easier to explain if we add the spins one at a time. And let's go down. We're looking for an increase over. Also note that E changes. The more times you spin, the higher the E. So instead of 90% 2032, we're looking at 99%. That means 99% of all the money that's in the bank that you can see in this giant pyramid, 99% of that is spent with other companies in the same network. Is that a monopoly? Well, no, because the company structure within the network is there are tens of thousands of different company owners, and that's we're not getting into that here. The other thing is a monopoly a bad thing? Look, from what I've been reading, the guys who were trying to do the monopolies, I think it was in the 20s or something like that, J.D. Rockefeller Jr., they wanted to not only run all the business, they wanted to sterilize all the poor people so they couldn't have babies. You know, that's a lot of bad will. So yeah, the idea of monopoly was tainted by the fact they were a bunch of Nazis, or worse. And no one said it. I haven't heard it. It may have been said at some point, but I certainly haven't registered it. That as they broke down the monopolies more and more and more and more, and new businesses started springing up, that pretty much coincided with the Great Depression. So, you know, maybe if you hadn't have got rid of the monopolies, the Great Depression wouldn't have happened. But then, you know, Great Depression is very relevant relative to the First World War as well, of course. But just saying, if we've seen the 64 reasons why, a lot of those, some of those are equality, and that is created by this system. If a system is so superior and does so much more for the people and the animals and the planet, then you got to use it. You know, call it what you want, but you know, chances are this will turn into software. It'll get the backing of Gates Foundation, Zuckerberg Initiative, Elon Musk, Paul G. Allen, Larry Page, Sergey Brin, sorry. And it'll happen in a country like Malawi, and Malawi will have its right to say, look, we choose not to antitrust. As long as the AGOA and other such deals still apply, and it doesn't, they don't have to, but as long as they do, then not much of a problem. Okay, so of course this extends each year. I add an extra spin. Where are we now? 2038. Let's 2040. Let's go to 2040. 2040, it's spin 17 and an E of 99. And note that there's 22 billion now in that glass pyramid. And by the way, there, because of the Experience Africa project, which is the first of the 64 reasons why, a lot of money going to conservation coming from the safari companies. Always a ripple effect. But also going to request for some special forces and tactical troops, whatever, jets, helicopters, to help that battle against the poachers, and at the same time helping the farmers and putting fences up But yeah, that would be called Fort Malawi, and the pyramid as such full of money would be in the middle of that fort. So not just not just anything. Right, okay, so at spin 17, cash flow is now up to 431. Remember, we started at about 8. And the money supply is now being increased 1,555 times, which is more than the current deposit rate technique used in the USA and others. That is a 900% increase. We are now talking about a 1,555 increase. And because no, it's not. So it's not because. And notice that at no point is this money not in the bank. It's in the bank for those 24 days. It's in the bank for the next 24 days. It's always in the bank. The money is always in the bank. At any one point, everybody could get their money. There would be no problem other than this, you know, what we're doing here. Note that one really has to have a good look at the software. Many years in design, and we'll look at that briefly, illustratively, in a little while. Let's just carry it going down, and where are we? 2048. Angel City 2. No, Angel City 4. See, I'm rusty. I've been on microeconomics for the last 6 weeks. Yeah, 2048. Cash flow nearly $1 trillion. GDP. I haven't mentioned this so far in the video. In a concise guide to macroeconomics, David A. Moss introduces the point that GDP is not the sum total of everything made. You don't include the parts. So in a house, you include the price the house sells at, say $150,000, but you do not add to that the cost of the cupboards and the cost of the fridge, because they're included in the house. Actually, no. Cost of the cupboards would likely be included in the house. Fridge might be separate. The point is, when one works out cash flow, that's not what's going to turn into GDP, because this is the same thing sometimes being done. So I've used 50%, which is actually a little bit lower than it probably is. So when we look at GDP, it's basically cash flow times the cash flow variable, the David A. Moss cash flow variable, which is currently 50%. Therefore, GDP is half of what the cash flow is. From that GDP, from the cash flow, all the GDP, no, from the cash flow, government, and this is called tax symmetry. Government spending or government allocation, money doesn't go to the government. Government tells us what it wants, or looks at the portfolio, reads the menu and goes, yeah, I'll have some desalination here, I'll have some welfare here, etc, etc, etc. So 18.75% of this cash flow goes to government spending. Okay, 25% pays for labour. But this is the tax symmetry. Of that 25%, a quarter is spent on either social housing or private housing, depending on if it's government spending or individual spending. But the point is, it's both the same. Social housing at the moment, they don't have a lot of houses. They're going to build them loads. Social housing. Government labour spending, because the Labour person who spends that 6.125% of their 25% owns the house eventually. So, and welfare also could go to government spending, but because the welfare specifically goes to the employee's family and or village, and if not anywhere, it's seen as a Labour expense, but it's actually also a government expense. You could put that category in either of them. Clever, hey? Right. Sorry, that wasn't exactly modest now, was it? Okay, we're going to go right the way down to the end now. And we can see here, I peak at 32 spins, and that requires a 99.5% E. So as savings, the LRC continues to grow year on year. Savings at the bottom. Savings. And we can see here that the majority of the money that anyone's making, the first thing we can see is there's been two new cities started, one in 32, one in 48. But we still got this nominal figure here for trade. Real estate sales, that's probably a good enough estimate. City sales, this would likely be more. But you see, of the 126 billion they now have as revenue or savings, 102 of that comes from savings. So the majority of the money made is not made from selling stuff. It is from the savings and just spending those savings 32 times within a year. Of course, there's logistics to it. Some businesses will be faster than others, but given 32 years to perfect it and the software that we're talking about, there's no reason why that can't happen. Okay, so we're going all the way to the end now, which is 2080. Angel City 5. Angel City 5, for the time being, is a time. The time, 2080, or if you want to be very, very specific, the 24th of November 2080, is Angel City 5. That's its name. The idea being that we actually plan Angel City 5 in immense detail long before it arrives, and we create histories back from that planning. We'll get into that in a second. This 87 quintillion histories, in fact. That's you can see the figure there. It's long. 87 714 630 433 327 500 000. That's the amount of different versions of this spreadsheet, but turned into software, we can create by 2080, which is a lot. Especially as I've given it 1 billion computer calculations per history. Okay, now let's get to the bottom. Let's get to the detail at the bottom. Okay, so what have we got? We've got GDP, whopping great big 4 trillion, but of course that's not like 4 trillion today. That's 4 trillion if the current GDP increases by 102.5% per year. What I've done, and the target of this exercise, History 3, whereas History 2 was a very balls to the wall up until 2048, and then it just experimented. This one is meant to be a worst case scenario, and I wanted by 2080 to have the Malawi share of global GDP at 1% or more. Not much more, just scraping it. And this is what we've done. But it changes depending on global growth, Malawi growth in trade, and Malawi growth in real estate. For instance, if global growth was 0 and Malawi growth was 102.5, in essence 2.5 less for both, i.e. 2.5 less from there, 2.5 less from there, the global global share of GDP is 1.44%. If global growth stagnates and Malawi trade growth and real estate growth increased by, well, you can see it 100 versus 105, 5% of global GDP. But take it the other way, if inflation is added, which it should be, we have the 105 and the 107.5 model, and that lowers global GDP market share to 0.86, 0.82, and if global growth is 107 and Malawi growth is 110, it's only 0.6. If it's even, nothing grows. It's between 0.7 and 0.2. Okay, couple of quotes here. Growth is one of the stupidest purposes growth is one of the stupidest purposes ever invented by any culture. We've got to have enough. This is by Donella Meadows, care of Kate Raworth. And we can see I actually did this in history too. After I'd made what I wanted to make, the next 10 years I just flatlined it so as it didn't grow. Just steadied along. And this point, in reading Kate Raworth's book, The Donut Economics, she makes this point about growth. There has to be enough, and I was already along those lines. But you know, she got it through got that idea through the finish line, and to the point of it being a major quote and a major intention. At a certain point, we want everything to just stay where it is, don't increase. You know. Okay. Let's have a look at some of the results. Another quote, also care of Kate Raworth, this time by Steve Keen, trying to analyze capitalism while leaving out banks, debt, and money is like trying to analyze birds while ignoring they have wings. Good luck. Okay, the software is all over the place. The software is everywhere. It's all software to a degree. All of this is software, run by software, or it is specifically software. What made me put that quote there in particular? Let me just I can't remember my point. It's somewhere buried in here though. Backstory, the economic theory of everything. I'll come back to that when I. Yeah. It was M Systems 0. It's about the M systems, and basically that when we do the here we go. The network on a string, or it could be supercoupling. Let me have a look. No, it's supercoupling. Backstory number 4. Both of these are about string theory. Not that I know the math in any way, shape, or form, but just, you know, the way it works is clearly explained by Dr. Amanda Peet and others. Yeah, this was the thing. The notion that the smallest constituent is paradoxically not the note. This is about string theory. Notice that this is the smallest constituent is paradoxically not at odds with the statement that it may also be the whole universe. This led to this spreadsheet where we take a simple Villa Secrets company. Villa Secrets is the microeconomics. And it, after 2 years, creates 2 new companies, which in turn do the same. Easily enough, companies don't cost a lot to create, as long as one makes the amount. But if you carry this on all the way through to 2080, you find at 2076, you take the lion's share of the economy. And so we change the notion that this is the smallest constituent is paradoxically not at odds with the statement it may also be the whole universe, for the notion that this is the smallest constituent, i.e. Villa Secrets, is paradoxically not at odds with the statement it may also be the entire economy. And whilst this is just a by the numbers math, we can see in histories 2 and in the history we're working on right now that we've got a lot of the way closer to it. The point is, getting back to this quote, is string theory, when the way I've deconstructed it and reconstructed it into economics, the string is money. Okay? So when you're thinking of string analogies, remember that the string is money. Okay, and of course, with the string being money, the center of my economics was money. And when I heard Steve Kane say words to this effect on, I think it was a Russia Today program, he made me get my first economics book, and then I read about 20 of them, and the last one, Kate Raworth's book, and maybe that should have been the first book I wrote, but it wasn't. But it's a very good book. Okay, there's another quote. What if, this is directly from Kate herself, what if we started economics with not with its long established theories, but with humanity's long-term goals, and then sort out the economic thinking that will enable us to achieve them? Kate Raworth. Okay, so the 64 Reasons Why, book 2 of A More Creative Capitalism, are those long-term goals, and we can see that we're applying them to 2080. Okay, and what do we get from this? We can see we've got 1% of GDP. That's impressive, but this is where it starts to get interesting. I have to go to this tab here because it's simpler. Okay, if we go to the right away, we get to social housing. We go down, it stays $150 per house. That's for the build cost. And you note this figure goes up each year, and that's to balance out the growth in the economy. Okay, and we can see 3,000 homes built that year, and it goes down. 11,000 built, and so on and so on. Now I've traced those figures back, and they are summarized here. No, here. And this is based on 6.25% of cash flow being spent on social housing, Spartan housing. And it's not social housing, this is luxurious housing. Well, here we go. 2032, 84,000 houses. 2048, 1 million. 2056, 2.5 million. 2064, 4.3 million. 2080, 10 million. And if that's enough for 30 million people, plus there'll be houses built privately as well, plus there's houses that are there already. Malawi's currently got about 19 billion people. Maybe it can restrict itself to 40 billion, but if not, one can always dedicate more money that way. And just remember, that's 6.25%. That's exactly a quarter of what Labour earns. So that money goes straight to funding these houses, and as soon as they're built, they get distributed to the population. This is interesting because the reason for using Malawi is because its GDP is so small that what we can offer is so large in comparison. It's like a no-brainer. Plus, it really makes us look good. If we're taking a country and completely massively increasing its GDP, other countries are going to want to be interested, leveraging expectations. A very good point made by David A. Moss in his concise guide to macroeconomics. And the point being is, even in South Africa, with this system as we're seeing here, 10 million houses are going to go a long way. You know, and note that certainly in the Malawi plan, for each square mile that is turned into suburb or town, half of that's going to be returned to nature reserve. So these are not houses in a shanty town. These are houses in middle of a nature reserve. Nature reserve is all around it, and the average plot size is about 400 square meters. And $150,000 spent in cash flow, you know, gets you a good house. Okay, so the point being, one could use this same principle in South Africa, and it would benefit South Africa hugely because this amount of houses would help. And of course, you could double the amount of inputs potentially and just double the amount of houses. The other point is here, history 2, when I was not cautious, I was just doing it as best. This amount of houses is built by 2048, and by 2080 there would be, one would have stopped the project. Everyone would have houses. Those houses would have all been knocked down and built up again, and you know, and then literally everyone in this version, everyone's living in a mansion. Okay, this version, everyone's living in a 4 to 5 star 2, 3, 4 bedroom house with a nice garden, very, very close to a nature reserve. Plus business, of course, so everyone's got jobs, etc., etc., etc. Okay, let's have another look at another special project, the first special project. Let's just see this. We've got that here. African rain, how to change the weather. Basically, that idea was simple. You get a huge amount of desalination projects, all solar powered, some earth. I mean, I've got experience. I genuinely do have experience growing plants in desert conditions. In fact, very challenging desert conditions on top of a sand dune in Hout Bay, where it's very, very windy. It can happen. You just need the water, and there it comes. So that was African Rain Project. And how can you change the weather? Well, if you've got all that water, you're making your, basically it's the idea to change the Sahara back to its rainforest. Because before the Romans, apparently it was forest. The Romans came along, then that was the end of it. Turned into a big desert. Turning it back. That's the African Rain Project. Siena's forests is the idea, as we heard, it's two ideas really. One is that for every building development we do, half of it's got to be nature reserve. And the other is, in case there is one can't match the net zero, one can offset by buying huge chunks and preserving them forever of forests around the world. And I suppose the third thing is to turn a forest into a commodity, so it's just too expensive to log or deforest. And we saw earlier the 64 reasons why and reason 32, growth theory versus climate change. I hope it's starting to sink in now. Right, so water. Basically here working on a 6.25% allocation. Roughly 2 billion. they're working on, these are really rough figures, it's $1.3 for the Adelaide plant that supplies 25,000 people. No, 250,000 people. Got to have this. Got to have the. All got to be run by solar, so it's a solar plant as well. So 2 billion. And we just work that out, and it ends up as 240 such plants, and that's water for 60 million people. Seeing as Malawi already has quite a lot of water because of the lake, it only really needs water for new things that are going to be done, i.e. the increasing population from maybe 19 to 40. So one only needs 20 million people supplied water for, and that's 33%. Therefore, 2.1% of the SES cash flow assigned to desalinization would do the water. Of course, one needs to add the piping, and that is ridiculous because it has to be done all the way across Mozambique. About 80 miles, I think, piping. Then I suggest it drops it into the lake, and then on the other side gets picked up again. I don't know. Also, Cape Town obviously needs a desalination plant, and you know, this is a realistic way of looking at the big future project of turning the Sahara back into forested land. Okay. Let's zoom up to the top, have a quick look here. Right, yeah, this is where we are. So we've been looking at this one, Special Project 1, Spartan Housing. You can see that's at 6.25%. And we also looked at desalinization. It's here somewhere. There we go. 3.125%. These are not rules. These are all from 64 Reasons Why. It's not all of them, and we can see to the right, Spartan contracts, global calling, advancing human potential, global healthcare, cities of science, S-World Angel Wing, the economic theory of everything, universal knowledge, Experience Africa, and over here we can see number 17, 18, 19, 20. This is ready for the next person who hoping is going to be either Kate or Steve. And yeah, the idea is they pick their own personal projects, see what happens, and of course, you know, really quiz me about all these inputs, change these inputs to what they believe is most likely. Okay, let's have a quick look at all the top. Right, so remember, purple is a text input. Everything else is worked out by formulas. This is a design for software, not really supposed to be a spreadsheet, but it is. And here we can see global growth times 2017. I think it's World Bank figures for GDP. The E here changes in 2032, 2048. To change that, you can change it just here, and it'll change all of the figures throughout the entire spreadsheet. A rough breakdown of how the investment may have been originally created. Here we have the figures of percentage of global GDP. Here we have the houses built. And here we can see the 16 special projects. And we're going to end up going down, starting with the donut by Kate Raworth. Okay, so if we imagine these 64, I'm actually going to move to the next slide because it's here we go. It's a more complex one. Okay, so basically, the idea is very elegant, and we picture a ring-shaped donut, the American kind, with a hole in the middle, and we want everything inside of that, inside of the donut. But that means we've got to take climate change problems, pull that back in, stop messing it up. chemical pollution. We've got to get all of this bad stuff, drinking water, land conservation, biodiversity loss, air pollution. We've got to get all that and bring that somehow into the donut. And as we can see, the 64 reasons why do that. Going the other way, social foundation, shortfalls, healthcare, education, all of this dealt with. So the 64 reasons why, which actually is now more like 100 reasons why, because the latest edition has more reasons. The donut is the best way to very, very, very simply think about it. We want to have all of this stuff from the outside taken out, all of this stuff from the inside taken out, and the economy should just look after everybody as well as the planet. Okay. A distributive network, another Kate Raworth, another graphic from her book, or actually the PDF that accompanies the ebook. And you can see here, this is our same version from 2012. Our global network is in a cube, and there's good reasons for that I'll not get into here. You can read through backstory, flap of a butterfly's wings for more maybe, or chapter 1 actually of S-World, Angel Wing, A More Creative Capitalism. Just going back to 2012, American Butterfly. This is the software design at that point. As I've said, there's a lot of software to be done. And 2016, the same software in a circular pattern. And you can see now the more familiar circular pattern. Software is now each one of these systems, you know, is a book to itself, really. Okay, the same software, but done from a perspective of theoretical physics. This is where the string theory comes in, and the quantum mechanics, etc., etc. It's a bit of a guidebook. Lastly, the POP principle, which was all the way back to the first thing we looked at here, this from 2011. This provides the equality, basically, and growth, equality and growth. Here's the macroeconomics, very important, very detailed. This is a book in itself. This is just 25 points of it. And lastly, brings us to the 64 reasons why. Okay, now have I explained the res principle well enough? Let's do it one last time. So this is our initial input, and we multiply it by 90%, making 5.6 billion from a 6.3 billion. We lose 10%, that goes to exports, or, you know, just places we can't track. Maybe the personnel, not all of the personnel. Most of the personnel get paid in network credits. That means they've got to spend it at a place, at a network, on network goods. But in the early days, it makes sense to also give a certain amount of cash, because we won't have everything they need at that point. Later down the road, yes, but at the beginning, no. So that, you know, maybe that's where that 10% is going missing. There's no spins this year, so that's it. This is basically savings. There's the savings. Gets staved there. And at the beginning of the next year, same network of companies spend it again. This time 91%. So the leakage is only 9%, making this cash flow. But mid-year, it is spent once again throughout the year. Again at 91, which almost doubles the cash flow. The more times each year goes by, we increase the spin by 1, albeit this is a example for that is easy. This is not how it would necessarily go down, not at all. and the dates change. So we always got the money in the bank. Money's in the bank at that time, in between that date and that date. Money's at the bank there. Money's in the bank there. There is no possible cash. There is, as long as the money, when one gets paid the new money, which is like that tap in the Samuelson, when one gets paid new money, as long as that new money is delivered as cash or something as good as cash, gold or something, and that money is there. Because if that money's not there and it's only electronically there, you're building a system on top of a system, and you're building a system on top of a weak system. That's why you have to have the cash. You can't just have electronically Bank of Manhattan owes you $1 billion. Can't have that. It has to be in cash. That way the cash is always there. Each year we increase the spin, well, for the first 32 years, and slowly increase the E as well. The higher the E, and just on this E, a 90% E is, I like to use the example of Elon Musk's SpaceX and Richard Branson's Virgin Orbit, who make 90% of what they send up there in the satellites themselves. It would just be a case of they also, well, yeah, it's similar. It's similar. Okay, I'm wondering. I think we're done here. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Well, if you have questions, please do ask them. And there is a longer video that goes into different details. So maybe have a look at that. It'll be I'll put the link somewhere where one can get to it. Okay. Thank you very much for your time.